Katie. I think we're intending this as kind of a talk/walkthrough, so you may want to pivot as we move around, or feel free to kind of move your stools and things. But yeah, thank you all for coming. Honored to be in conversation with Emily. I thought we could start by maybe kind of talking a little bit about where you're coming from, Emily, from painting, before we dive into the works that are on view. I know you're really thinking about a very particular lineage of American painting coming out of abstract expressionism. And I thought if you want to talk about how that informs your practice.
So, you know, I was born in Manhattan. I grew up in New Jersey. So that's kind of like the background. But when I was in high school, my father and I both got interested in contemporary art. My father was painting in the fields of Suzhou and like Van Gogh paintings. And we both got involved in painting at the same time, which was Philip Guston, and early Philip Guston before he became interested in KKK, Joan Mitchell, de Kooning, Pollock. And so there was a whole cast of abstract painters that I was really interested in, including Mondrian, which is not to, wouldn't categorize him the same way. But so that was my big love, my first big love. And then I went to Europe in 1980, and it was like, I saw these amazing Renaissance paintings, and I saw this really wonderful drapery, and everything was just like so luscious and so of the heart. So I came back to New York, and it was very different. It was minimalism. It was cold. It was, I thought they were cold. And it was a different climate. And I was like, what am I going to do with this abstract expressionist background, this love of the Renaissance, and I'm coming back and it's minimalist. I just felt so out of sorts with things. And gradually I kind of like painted my way through, and if you're addicted to the medium, you just keep going. And then my paintings were sort of abstract. I was just working with brushworks, and then I gradually took pictures of Renaissance paintings that were in black and white books, right? Because back then the color was not so sophisticated. And so I photocopied them onto acid-free paper, and then I said, let me dialogue with these artists who were so amazing and that I love so much. So I was dialoguing with Piero della Francesca and Giotto and all these people, and even people that I thought were too sweet, like Signorelli. I thought, God, can I stand another oyster on a half shell? I don't know, And then I got into it, and I was like, wow, this guy's a beast. The negative shapes and everything he did with it. So, so then it wasn't until, I'm sorry, I'm kind of a slow learner sometimes, but it wasn't until I was writing an artist statement recently that I realized that all that love for abstract expressionism went underground through the Renaissance and came up into my paintings today in the form of qi. I've been talking about qi for about 15, 20 years, and I didn't realize that it was all related to the gesture of Renaissance drapery, because I really love the gestures, and I was so uninterested in the narrative. Okay, we get it, it's baby Jesus, it's the Madonna, but what is really the content of this painting? And
is
then
kind of dematerialized, kind of transcendence in a way.
Yeah. So every artist took that challenge in a different way. For Crivelli, it was like the long outline of the fingers, and for every artist it was different. But for some artists, that the drapery was crazy. They invented new ways to form drapery. The Germans had one way. The Germans in Munich at a certain time, and then the Italians and the second-rate painters were different from the first-rate, from like Raphael. And once you got into Michelangelo, it became less interesting because it became conventionalized. So, and then I started with Chinese drapery, which is a whole different thing. So Chinese drapery, you know, they're like, only, children and fools are interested in, making things look really modeled, right? Because who wants to model? I mean, you want to get the energy of the figure moving through space. And they were trying to teach about Confucianism. So it's kind of like, how do you teach how you should dress, how you should walk, how you should move through space in a painting, in a court painting, and that was through the chi of the drapery. So, if you look at the early Guggaichi paintings, which have, like lines like this, you're thinking like, that's a weird way, but then you realize that it's really about moving through space gracefully. If you've ever looked at a Japanese tea ceremony, you realize like the women move in a very specific mannered way, and their drapery kind of echoes this. So, and then I started doing Tai Chi, and I started doing Tai Chi. I was like moving. I was like, wow, this is like my drawings this is like my drawings. It's like kept doing it just because I was really doing my drawings. And then...
Do you think of the paintings as performance in that sense, in terms of movement then?
I wish I could say yes, but I don't. I'm a diehard painter. And I've sort of dabbled in photography until the iPhone came around, and then I felt like there was no space for me. And then what else have I done? I mean, I've gone into Chinese ink painting, which for me I thought was a big stretch.
Yeah.
But then I realized, like, wow, I can do this really easily. But I never allowed myself to do Chinese ink painting before because I'm American born. I don't know how to speak the language. So everything is very, I didn't think it was my territory.
But you were also talking about, thinking about like what, as an artist, you may or may not have permission to do within one's own parameters. But I remember we were talking yesterday and you were thinking about, or saying the abstract expressionist kind of did everything in painting, but for you to kind of find another way in was through thinking about qi and that kind of movement and force.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I love about a de Kooning painting is that, he can show this gesture and a mark. And when you watch him paint, because there are movies of de Kooning painting, he goes very slowly, but it looks really fast. And especially the last paintings. A lot of people like to discount the last paintings, but I think the last paintings are really the core of a lot of this energy that I'm talking about, where he pares it down to a few colors, and then he just goes for it. And I don't know if he does it fast or slow, but they feel so right with how you are moving as a human being,
In that moment, he's kind of coming down with dementia, so people are kind of debating how much of it is he really present. But like that muscle memory is kind of there no matter what, right?
The muscle memory is there, and I've had some dementia in my family, so I understand a little bit about it. And you may not remember names of things, you may not remember what you did yesterday or what you ate yesterday, but you still remember something about life, I think, You remember that, I don't know, you remember what it means to be alive, I think. And I think that's, if you ever look at something like you're standing in nature and you see something that just takes your breath away, like for a second. And I was talking about this with Amy this morning. It's like, when it takes your breath away, you have no words for it. I remember being in Italy and it was so beautiful, I almost felt depressed because I was like, there was entropy in me. And it's just so beautiful that you just go, oh, and you haven't, so that's, and I think that is what happens when you look at an artwork that you really connect to, is that you just kind of, for a split second, it could only be for 2 seconds, the weight of a sculpture. I'm looking at John Crawford. The weight of a sculpture, or a painting that really moves you. It's just like, and you don't even realize it, and then you go on to something else.
Maybe that's a good segue to this idea of the unseen and invisible in your work, and how you try to capture that or embrace it through painting. And maybe we can talk a little bit about the two portal pieces in that way.
Yeah, so during COVID, we're all locked up, and the painting on the left was the first painting, and the painting on the right is the last painting. So I always think that cliches and corny things start out as a very earnest kind of idea, and then the population understands it somewhat, so then they repeat it over and over until you get sick of it. And then you're thinking, oh my God, it's so corny. And so the first painting is really about what happened in the Hands Across America. Like when they invented that Hands Across America, I was thinking what does that mean? What happens when you get to a river? I mean, I'm so literal sometimes that I couldn't fathom it being metaphorical.
And trying to create these paintings that can almost touch each other.
Yeah, right. But I think the first four paintings have both the blackness in the center, the black round circle, and the keyhole.
Because there's 7 paintings, right?
There's 7 paintings. And then the last paintings do not have that. They have something else. And I think that the last painting, to me, represents a kind of liberation, between having to distinguish good and bad, or evil and non-evil, having to, I don't know, it's really about the energy of being copacetic with oneself, and it's like, do you all know what a portal, torus is? Yes. Yeah, okay, so does anybody not know what a torus? I can explain it. A torus is a scientific term, and there are toruses everywhere. There's a torus, it's an energy of you're taking things in and then you're going out. So it's like this, right? We as humans have it, trees have it, the planet has it, everything has it. And so, but the torus itself is a scientific term. So it's actually a donut in the sense that it goes like this, but it goes like this. So if you imagine it coming out at all sides, that one is a torus.
Should we come over?
Yeah. And let's see, I have another torus in another painting.
In the small painting as well, right?
Oh, yeah,
So this
that
pinkish schema here, right?
Right. And by the way, I put this blue tape on the floor because I think it's the optimal place to see this painting. So, later on, you might want to put your toes here. When you put your toes there, your peripheral vision will kind of disappear into the edges, and then just the rest is yours. The rest is for you to figure out. But yeah, and then so the white dots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, the white dots are the chakras, and I always think that we think of the base chakra starting here, but it can also be the grounding element that goes into the ground.
So it's interesting because you're using kind of mapping of different things or different kinds of schema. You have the chakra points of the human body, but then you're superimposed with a kind of mathematical torus. Do you want to talk a little bit more about those motifs, or it's like how the body is implicated in it? It's also interesting thinking about where, as a viewer, one's body is in relation to the painting too.
Yeah, so I'm sort of still figuring that out, but a lot of people look at my work and they say, "Oh, you must be influenced by Hilma af Klint." And I said, "Yeah, in some ways." I saw her show in the '90s, and it was very liberating for me as an abstract painter to feel that you could put a lot of spiritualism inside an abstract configuration. So, but then I kind of forgot about her, and I mean, once I kicked that door open, I was fully liberated. It was like, what do I need another painter for, you know? And then I just started off on my own thing. But like, for example, I always like playing off the body with the geometric underlay. Like, why is it that our bodies are symmetrical? Why is it that we have two shoulders, the hip, the wrist, the finger? I mean, we're so symmetrical, right? And so, but we can move into ways that are so unsymmetrical, and I like that play. So this one, I think of this as the Milky Way, and the millions of stars and planets that are in the Milky Way. And when I saw the Sephiroth, which comes from the Kabbalah, I immediately, because I'd been working with the chakras for so many years, I immediately had a connection. You know, and then, of course, it's very different, but I was very drawn to the symmetry of the body, and also that it talked about the symmetry of the body in its implicit kind of referencing, right? And so that's why we have this configuration. But it was it's the Sephiroth, if you ever look at it, it's such a strong image. It's a really strong image that you have to mitigate it. So I had to make it, you know, you do it with color and all these other different things.
So Emily, can you talk a little bit about process then? Because I know you speak about the paintings a lot about intuition, but obviously a lot is also planned out, and a lot of these kind of forms that reoccur, and kind of like, how do you approach the painting when you start?
So I do a lot of ink drawings that, I mean, I used to do color drawings. Now I do ink drawings about this big. And they're really just to establish imagery. And if I know that I'm going to layer this image over that image, and then I just kind of feel it out. It's so intuitive. It's hard to talk about the process. I'll think about the kind of space I want to create. And that's why you see a lot of blue repeating, because the blue pushes you way back in the space. But in that one, this red painting, it was great because I really wanted to talk about the power and the fierceness of a standing figure, you know. And so that's why it's red in the background, because I didn't want to make a red figure.
And have the kind of yellow float, the gold float in front of it.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, I think that color is a really intuitive element that we all have to approach through knowing, I don't know, just kind of knowing who we are and knowing where we gravitate to. That's it.
And you mentioned before that the kind of golden figure form is kind of based off of some sculptures you've been working on, right?
Yeah. So I made these, a whole bunch of little sculptures out of Sculpey, which is a horrible medium. I later learned it melts. Well, anyway, so I made these little figures, and one of them was a figure holding the world. Another one is they're all different. They're all different figures, but I really find them very, I don't know, succinct with where I am now, and so I thought, you know, I should make a painting of a sculpture. I did a whole bunch of 11 by 14 paintings of the sculpture, like each one a little portrait of the sculpture, and then I put them away. So,
and then you kind of come back to it in a sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm realizing now that the kind of line crystalline form that reads more in the background kind of repeats from the painting on the far left, right?
Right.
It's like the same motif. So you kind of come into these things similar to the figures where they come in and out of different paintings.
Yeah, I guess it's a way of creating order in a non-ordered world. You know, we live in these like boxes, like these houses, right? And then we carry briefcases that are square, and we, you know, it's like, and the cars go squarish, and then they go aerodynamic, and then they get back to square. So it's like we have this relationship with geometry, and so I'm also seeing like, what is our relationship to the geometric world? What is the geometric world? Because if you look at the structures of crystals, if you look at a lot of science structures, it's geometric, right? So we do have a relationship, even though like in this room, I don't see anything but the squareness of my paintings being geometric. Yeah. But I wanted to open it up to the audience and see what they think.
If people have questions, feel free to jump in.
You just said, to me, I'm not an artist, I'm a scientist, it comes immediately the geometric dimension, both basic as well as complex geometry. But the other thing that kind of like came out to me, I was immediately drawn, I don't know if you have seen, for example, Northern Australia Aboriginal painting. They have these mental maps, this concept
Yes.
of a map of
Yes.
dimensional space that's actually...
It's a dream time.
Right.
Yes.
Spiritual kind of geometry, if you
Yes.
want.
Yes.
So could you kind of elaborate, because it really came to me really strong, that
I love those I love those paintings, and the dream time is something I can definitely enter into, but I don't know what else to say about it except that the really authentic ones, because a lot of times they've gotten so popular that everybody wants to do a Dreamtime painting. So you have to kind of separate it, just like African sculpture and everything else.
Do you have a connection? Do you feel that you have a connection in between your conscious and your something else that goes out? That's what I was trying to say, that comes out of your paintings. You feel that you have a highway that bypass that?
Yeah. And but I never feel I've arrived, and I've always feel like I have so much more to go. And you can try different techniques of getting there, including mushrooms.
Well, you've also made a series of paintings that are about meditation.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah, they're this big, and I didn't let a lot of them go because I loved sitting in front of them. And then I would sit there so I was going to change one. I was going to change it out of the meditation room, and my husband said, "Oh, I really like meditating in front of this painting." So then I had to keep it there, and but I want to get back to it actually, because a meditation painting has to be like, it can't be vertical. To me, it has to be like horizontal, because you're sitting there and you're rooted to the ground. I think vertical, you would leave the space too quickly.
it's a little more stable of a composition.
Yeah.
And you've spoken before about kind of how the orientation of different compositions, where it's horizontal or vertical, really carries a lot of different meanings and energies for you. If you want to elaborate.
Yeah. So the horizontal is really about moving across and doing human things, and then then if you keep going this way, you'll end up making a full circle. Whereas you can't make a full circle going this way, vertical, because you'll be in some Mars, Venus, whatever, So that's the the big difference.
Takes you in a different mindset and place.
Yeah, and I always think about that. Landscape is about what people do on Earth, and then vertical is about your ascension, and which is a hard thing to really grasp. It's a hard thing to grasp. What are you going to do when we die? Where do we go? What's going to happen to us?
It takes you back to the Renaissance painting, in one way.
Yeah, in some ways. But the Renaissance paintings are so interesting because they are in their own time in the 15th or 14th century. They are in their own time trying to imagine the life of Jesus. And so, all the people are wearing Renaissance clothes, but they didn't wear those clothes. Yeah.
It's another kind of time travel.
Yeah.
You're talking about shit when you're creating. Is there any sound that come to you, like music or vibrations that come to you when you're creating, or like thinking about it?
Oh, God, I wish I could say yes. Yeah, you know, sound is a really interesting element, and I'm not sure I know how to control it. I only know how to control it for myself. And that's that when I'm in the studio and I'm doing Tai Chi, I'm thinking about the painting, and so I'm doing it in silence. But music is so great. Music is an uplifter. Music is something you can get involved in a whole different way. And so if you're lacking energy, you put on some music and it'll give you some energy, right? So I have to mitigate, because when I paint too much with music, it's like having two artists in the same studio. And it's like too confusing, you know? Yeah, it's like I used to paint listening to books on tape, and that was a mistake. Because you're in, like I was in Morocco and I was listening to, and it was just like confusing.
So you practice Qigong, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you see Qigong influencing how you paint and vice versa?
You know, the thing is that I don't think it influences how I paint, but I love to stand in front of my paintings and do Qigong. So I find the paintings echo what I'm doing. Like, you know, if I'm doing like this, and you know, there's that yoga pose that you put one leg up and you do this, right? The tree, I think it's called the tree. And then I'm looking at that painting and I'm like, I'm saying yes, and I can stand. If I look at that red dot in the head, I can stand for longer and more balanced than if I'm looking at you or, you know, somebody close up. Yeah, so.
Every dancer knows this spot.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 Does that answer your question? Okay.
Hi, this is a beautiful show. It just seems like there's a spectrum, you know, sort of subjective
Mm-hmm.
to something objective, some sort of schematic.
Mm-hmm.
And you obviously, you know, you made them, so they come from you. But is there any? Are some of them almost like self-portraits that you're in now?
As a human being, yeah, but not as a person with a narrative. Like, you know, when I was born, where I was raised. I don't like. I resist paintings that are too personal in a narrative way, because I think we all have lives. We all have semi-interesting lives, but I don't want to know about all of your lives. I want to know about what brings us all together. I want to know about the bigger questions. And I've always thought of myself as a big picture thinker. So if you want to sit and tell me about, you know, what you did yesterday, I'm like I'll tune out. You know, I want to know, you know, other things, right? So that's so in that sense, they're not personal portraits. Like, you know, that painting there is really about. I am so fascinated by the ziggurat. Why? I don't know. I'm so fascinated by the ziggurat and the Tower of Babel. I have my own theories about the Tower of Babel, and so I have to paint it to kind of like be with it. And it has a lot to do with how people used to communicate psychically, and then language came over and they started occupying their minds with words, and they lost the ability to communicate psychically. But so those are huge things that have nothing to do with my life, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Like with the bigger ones, it feels very obvious that it addresses your body. Like here's the shoulders, here's the hip, and here's the arm, and you feel mirrored in its presence.
Mm-hmm.
There people talk about those ones that are floating up.
What were you saying? The vertical one that?
Yeah, the horizontal one.
Uh-huh.
Or that one, where it's less of a figuration. And,
Yeah. So, you know, I only started painting horizontals in the last 5-6 years. And 5 years ago, I would paint one out of, and then I would go back to the vertical and go, oh, I feel so much at home. And So it's harder for me to talk about it. I don't really know how to talk about it yet. Ask me in a couple of years.
It's where the intuition comes first, right?
Yes, I think that part of being me as an artist, every artist is a little different, is that I have learned to trust the visions that I get. Like I might get a vision, and a lot of headier artists or conceptual artists would say, nah, you know, blah 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 blah, and they would come up for 10 reasons not to do it. I think like I don't know what that means. I don't know how that's gonna, but then I do it, and then a year later, I'm like, oh, no wonder I did that. Oh, it fits into this by this, you know, and then I can spin a story like what I'm telling you now about the vertical paintings. Yeah.
More question, and then also welcome to ask questions one-on-one with Emily too. Anything else?
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
This was great. So I also must say, you probably saw up at the front, but we have copies of Emily's beautiful newest monograph, In the Weave of Worlds, Alchemy in Painting, and it was produced concurrent with her recent solo exhibition.
Yeah, it's a book of my work seen through the lens of alchemy. And so Patricia Koretsky, who was the one who initiated the book, unfortunately she's not here. Her leg wasn't feeling so well this morning. But it has introduction by the curator and dealer Johnson Cheng, who I work with in Hong Kong, and it has an essay by on alchemy, East and West, by Patricia Koretsky, and then she interviews me, and then I have my own statement, and then Elizabeth von Samsonov, who is a Austrian philosopher who's also a friend, she's got a nice essay because I relate a lot to her work, and her work is diagrammatic. So that used to be a dirty word for me because I didn't want my paintings to be diagrammatic. But I really relate to the way she talks about the diagram. And then Zoe Young ends the book with its relation to quantum physics and all of the things that are going on with the space program. Yeah.
Buy the book.
It's only $35.
Books for sale up front. Emily can sign them. Beautiful images of the work. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.